Welcome back to Fire Emblem Thracia 776. I'm going to be honest with you, this is not my favorite map. It might be like a bottom 3 map for me. Not sure if it's my absolute least favorite. If you have Safi trained up, or you give her the elite manual or whatever to make it easy, then you can warp skip this map. And I sorely wish that I could have done that here, but the way that I do it, I like to hold off with all that for some maybe minor benefits later. Might have to rethink that whole mindset, and you'll see why after watching this. This is the introduction to the mini Olwyn and Fred, or Alfred as he's sometimes known, arc. Starts here and ends in 2 chapters, in a Gaiden technically, not in 2 mainline chapters. There's this intro here where Dorius, or Dryas, or whatever you want to call him, and Leaf are having this conversation, and Leaf's like, what's the best course of action? And Dorius is just like, oh, you're a smart kid, you'll figure it out. So it's like, thanks, yeah. There's 2 houses to visit, and there's 2 thieves. And this is like just pure RNG, because they are designed to head right for the houses, but they don't always move. They always intend to move toward the houses, but they don't always do it. And so if they decide not to move for their first couple turns, or 2 out of 3 turns, or whatever, this map is really a breeze, because there's no real hurry. Why would you want to hurry? Well, there's a rescue staff in one of the houses. And I'll tell you right now, it's the top house. And when I had played this, I had forgotten that, because I wasn't checking anything in advance. I was just going off memory. So I chose the wrong freaking house. And you'll see why that's a big deal in a bit. But this armor that I already killed on the fort, he has a bridge key, and he actually has one of the only flame swords in the game. So if you can manage to capture it, that is great. But since he has an extra whopping 10 defense you get from forts, it's pretty difficult unless you do some cute math in the beginning there, and I generally don't do that unless I'm doing a really slow, deliberate run. But yeah, bridge keys, that's a thing now. There's bridges that can be lowered in this map. There's like 2, I think. There's one in the bottom middle, and another one in like the bottom left sort of quadrant. You don't need to lower them depending on what you do. I gave Karen the leg ring because if you give her that, she can visit this bottom house and canto back out of the ballista range. Yeah, ballista are a thing now too. This is your introduction to ballista as well, and get used to them. They suck and they're everywhere. And this is one of the more annoying chapters for ballista. There's one up at the top here that keeps your guys from moving out in a timely manner, and no matter how fast you go up there, you can't really reach that ballista, even if you're going at breakneck speed. So what's in this house again? I think it's like a magic up staff or something. Yeah. So, I mean, that's good to get, but it's not the best of the 2 items. And if you're not sending Karen, you basically just have to book it with like a promoted mounted unit. And if the thieves move full move every turn, they will never get there in time. Especially on that bottom one, because there is that drawbridge. Which is why I sent Karen that way, sort of. I mean, I also thought that the rescue staff was in that house. Which I don't know why, because I've had bad experiences with that house up top before. So this isn't one of those games. I think I was talking in one of the first few chapters where thieves or whoever intends to destroy a house will go for you if you're in range. They'll just run straight for the house. So guess what's going to happen here? I mean, Finn is not in range there. One thing you can get lucky with is if you send Fergus and like he gets a movement star or something. I've also managed to get guys in like a good spot by like doing a weird rescue chain with a unit like Matua. But it never seems to work out the same way, even if you kind of know what you're doing. So this map is stupid. But if you can catch up to those thieves, or even if you don't and you're just like a little bit behind them, it's good to capture them as well, because each of them has a stamina drink and a rapier, I think. I don't know if they ever will really decide to attack you, because if you block them off, they'll just run the other way, typically. So maybe if you spend a lot of time pincering them, they will attack you, and that can be dangerous. But, deployment for this map is very high, and no matter who you bring, if you deploy full deployment, then you're going to have a lot of squishy units. So a lot of them are just going to get stuck back here. And you can use Karen and, as you see here, Selfina to ferry them over in a more timely fashion. And Safi doesn't, as long as you have some physics staves, or reblow as they're called in Japanese, then she doesn't necessarily need to be up at the front there. And that's a very good thing, because so there's like 3 different things you could consider bosses in this map. There's what's her face, Olwen and Fred. They appear and they charge you, as you see here. They eventually leave, so as long as you just hold out, they will leave, and you can't actually kill them, by the way, which we'll touch on in a moment when it becomes relevant. And then there's the boss on the gate, like the actual boss of the chapter. And then there's also a wyvern boss, and you gotta watch out because he has a movement star, and he always seems to proc it at least once during a map, so you really gotta be careful with that. The best way to combat it is to be proactive and just put one of your strongest units in range of him that you think can kill him in one round. That way, even if he was going to proc that movement star, it doesn't matter. Now, the bottom of the ballista, it's like you can kind of hold off on dealing with that, especially if you have Karen get that house. It's like that whole section is not that important until you actually get into the ballista range from the top. And then there's a ballista up at the very tippy top, sort of, where Asbel is going, over those mountains. And there's also like a bishop up there, that token bishop with the siege tome that I always talk about. And as long as you get Karen over there, like, she can just capture him, because I don't think he has a short range tome, which is why you can do that. So the leg ring helps with that as well, just getting that guy out of the picture. But you got to take care of that ballista first. So it's kind of like, I usually end up sending Finn over there to take care of the thief, and then or Fergus, and just end up having them continue on. For some reason, I sent Asbel up there too, which, in retrospect, you don't need both of them doing it. I think in my mind I was like, maybe Asbel can take on the boss there, or he can attract some ranged units to attack him from below the cliff, although most of those guys are stationary. And Olwen, I think, could potentially kill him, especially at the HP level he's at now. I don't know. But this is the turn where I did have to think about the boss, so I ended up having Dawson take him on here by just leaving him out. And, it's kind of like, if Dawson misses and then that guy gets a movement star, then it's it might be game over for a unit like Selfina. But here's where you're going to want to start looking a little bit closely. So what I'm doing here is having Dagda help with this whole rescuing, or not rescuing, but capturing maneuver. And what I should have done is, when Finn captured that thief, he should not have kept charging the ballista, because I already was sending Asbel up there. Or just do one or the other. I shouldn't have done both. And then Dagda is unfortunately still carrying that thief. So Given what we know about a cost and that it triggers on any kind of attack, even like a long-range attack, will still attack twice, even though Dagda isn't countering, he's not really in a direct round of combat. So I looked over the video quite a bit, and my feeling here is that it did matter that I left this guy on Dagda's back. I'm pretty sure that he was safe if I had remembered to take that guy off of him. Unfortunately, I did not, and that made it so that he had pretty much no chance of dodging any of those long-range attacks. There was no reason for me to have those two guys in range there. So I really don't know if I had remembered to take that guy off of him, if that would have made the whole move intelligent or not. But I'm going to say probably not. I would not have risked that anyway. And so I got a little emotional here and attacked Fred, which maybe shows my hand a little bit. We'll get to why that is at a later date. But like I said before, you can't kill Fred and Olwen. So you can get a little bit of experience, I suppose. But I wasn't really thinking clearly here. So I just had Dawson take a couple swings at him, which wasn't super risky. I knew that they were going to leave on the next turn. I can always feel it coming, even though I don't know consciously which turn it is. But Dagda's death quote is actually what I want to talk about for the Japanese here. In one of the translations, he's basically just like, yeah, dude, no regrets. And in the Japanese quote, it's more like he's saying, I lived kind of a rotten life doing what I do, but I hope I did some good. And that's not a literal translation. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on it in the description, but that's the gist of what I'm going to say down there. So check that out if you've been interested in these little quips about the Japanese script. As far as I can tell, there's nothing of real note in the main script of this map. But there's so much other dumb crap to talk about in this map. I don't really know where to go next. Like I said, you don't really have to send anybody on this bottom part, but I ended up sending Ashin, Tanya, and Lifis down there, and Safina. And it's like, it does help to take care of those two ballista. That's the only real way you can get to them in time. This group of armors in the center, none of them move, and once you kill the first one who's standing on a fort, it's pretty easy to duck in and out and take care of the rest of them. Because those cavaliers on the far left, sort of, they don't start moving until you get in range, and their effective range is pretty low because of all the forests and whatnot. Forts, I think, cost the same as like a plain tile. Like they don't impede you at all. And I think maybe they do in some of the other fire emblems, but I'm not sure. So yeah, you got to break out like magical damage and like armor slayers here. Fergus is great on this map, although in my previous Ironman, I actually lost Fergus on this map. Getting a little ahead of myself here, but the boss has a night killer, or you might call it a horse slayer, and he doesn't move, so it's like you don't ever really need to leave a mounted unit in his melee range, but I had forgotten that he had that thing on him, so I ended up just leaving Fergus in range so he could take care of him on enemy phase, and that was very bad. This it got a little weird on the bottom here because I don't think I even tried to have Lithus be capture baited there. I think that was just a fun little surprise there. I think he might have lost like a low use lockpick there or something. Or maybe I'm thinking of a previous chapter. But yeah, so this whole thing where with Asbel, like the downside of sending him to kill that ballista is that he then soaks more of this guy's siege tome uses, so that sucks. You want Asbel down here to take care of these bulky jagoffs. But you definitely want to constantly be checking ballista damage and just know how much effective defense your guys are going to have when they're standing on forts or mountains or anything. Even some of your weakest units can probably take a ballista hit if they're on a fort. They're just that insane. But like, see, Fergus can go up to this point here and still be safe from those cavaliers on the left. They have like rapiers and stuff. And I think that Armor Knight might have a hammer or something. So, like I was saying, this game hates Dawson sometimes. It's also really easy to get Karen killed here, obviously, if you're careless. But I don't think I've ever gotten her killed here, per se. But yeah, Ashin is like a good candidate to send down here if you're going to send anybody, because most of those units down there are physical. There's just the one mage, and if you keep him in the forests, he's probably dodgy enough and has enough hit points where he'll be fine as long as he has a vulnerary on hand. I think I've even sent, like, you can send your promoted mounted guys. I keep wanting to say cavaliers, but they're not all cavaliers. Fergus has like extra move in forests, I think, so if you send him down there, he can get things done pretty quickly. Although you still need Lithus to do some shenanigans and get rescued out using a lockpick, unless you somehow procure that bridge key, which I think is more trouble than it's worth. But this center area is where you gotta watch out, because if you leave somebody like Ronan or even Nana, there they can get killed by even like one ballista if you're unlucky. But one thing I should talk about, because we have that shiny new elite sword, is if you put it on Nana and she heals while having it equipped, she gets double experience. So that's a good thing to do if you're not using it to train anybody in particular. Also, she gets +5 defense from it. So Paragon Sword is just good for protecting her against those stray ballista bolts and anything else. It can save her life, honestly. Like, she doesn't need Paragon or Elite per se, because she gets experience from healing, and you can get her involved in Master for extra experience and everything, so she's never really behind. Sometimes they even have her promoted by this time. But it's just a neat little trick you can do, because at this stage there's nobody like Shiva who you want to like let loose in this map. Like, they'll just get killed even with the defense boost. So, I don't know. If you don't have some sort of plan for sending a bulky unit into the line of fire and just taking out these ballista, it's like this map just chugs along, because if you're unskilled enough, you might just have to wait out all the ballista bullets. And if you have a unit like, say, Dagda, you can drain them twice as quickly because of him getting hit twice, as long as he has more attack speed and hit points. But we can't very well do that at this point now, can we? It's mostly just cleanup at this point. I took a break from recording so I could think of some stuff in this last part of the chapter here, because there's just not much to go over until we get to the boss, and even that I already talked about a little bit. So let me use this opportunity to just talk about some of the characters we have now, or you could potentially have at this point, and where they should be at this point in the game. Fergus, Nana, Asbel, Finn, Ashian, Tanya, etc. Those kinds of units, if they've reached level 10 or higher by this point, you should probably have them promoted. With Asbel in particular, you should note that characters that promote from mage to sage in this game get humongous promotion bonuses. So if you're trying to like max out magic or speed or something before promoting, don't, because they're going to cap it at some point no matter what. I mean, I have had kind of magics through to Asbels, so maybe you have to play it by ear a little bit, and especially if units are still gaining experience at a pretty good rate, and they might be facing a lot of promoted enemies in the chapter you're in, then okay, sure, you can hold off, but I find that holding off often means that a character is left open to die somewhere where they otherwise wouldn't have if they had their promotion bonuses. This game is really more than a lot of the other Fire Emblems, one where you can promote early and not hurt a character's long-term potential just because of the low caps and the fact that you can help out growths with scrolls, and you can do good even with just a little bit of micromanaging if you want. I know I kind of spoke out against mindful scroll usage at all. I just throw scrolls on whomever needs one to protect against criticals, but you can think about it a good deal every so often and get some needed bonuses to strength or something, like I was talking about with Finn in the chapter where he needs to capture that boss, or somebody needs to capture that boss. It doesn't technically have to be Finn. There are actually a limited number, more or less, of Knight Proofs in this game. You can buy them at one point later on, but they're very expensive, and for all intents and purposes, they're kind of a limited resource. And like, let's say you come out of Manster with, like Brighton level 10, Machua level 10, Dalson level 10. In a vacuum, I'm not against promoting them, especially right away, considering what I just went over. But you really want to save those for staff users a lot of the time, especially if you're not using Safi the way I use her, and you want to get her promoted to get to A rank staves. If you're not, by this chapter, she should be around like halfway to A or so. You can use one of the patches that's out right now lets you see weapon and staff experience from the status screen, whereas this game doesn't give you like even a bar or anything in the vanilla game. So you kind of just have to feel it out. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much, because it's like, well, they'll get there when they get there. And if they're not there yet, that just means you have to grind it up a little bit more. But whether or not you can see it, try to have her at least like halfway to A at this point, because you're really going to need it in 3 chapters, counting the Gaiden, and 2 chapters if you want to make that upcoming Gaiden easier. But it's really essential for the Gaiden after that. So back to just the scarcity of Knight Proofs. Combat units often don't get that great of bonuses from promoting. I mean, they get an extra point of movement, mostly, except for like Ronin, but they don't get much else. They might be able to like move over mountains or something, but that's kind of a niche benefit, even though it's a problem in certain maps, like some of the ones that look like this, especially, even though there's no mountains typically in the way per se, but there's like a Gaiden later on where Dalson just can't move over it, and unpromoted mounted units have a tough time with it also. But staff users typically get like a more or less full staff rank. I think most of them do, the ones who do at all. And the exception is Nana. She only gets sword rank. She doesn't get staff rank at all. So that's why I was talking about when we first recruited her that a realistic benchmark for her is C. And that's with some fairly heavy use, because I think she starts at E rank with no experience. So don't use it on her for that reason, but you can use it on her if you want to make her a better combat unit, and there's a definite argument for that. There's a chapter later on, getting ahead of ourselves, not sure if we're going to visit it because it's part of a route split, but a bunch of mage knights come, and if you give her the Wrath manual, she can like take out that entire squad that's normally supposed to be pretty scary. That's one memory I have of Nana. But yeah, there's staff units later on that don't start with as high of a staff rank as Safi. In fact, most of them don't. I think one of them later on starts at B, and that's about it. And another one doesn't promote with a Knight Proof. There's a promotional event. But there's definitely others where you want to use those Knight Proofs over a unit like Brighton, sorry to say. I like you, Brighton. You're very useful in certain parts of Manchester, but sorry, you just don't get priority there. But I'll talk more about that once we get to later chapters, and just how many Knight Proofs you can still expect to have, as long as you're using them at a reasonable rate, not hoarding them too much. But that's roughly about how much time we have for today. I'm not playing the video while going over this. I'm assuming that I'm probably either fighting the boss or the boss is dead at this point. He has a Knight Proof, by the way. You should make sure to steal that, probably with Lithis. I don't think Lara has the speed to steal it. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in Chapter 11. It's going to be a fun one.